Bomba-dee-da, 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 bomba-dee-da.
Hey, welcome to Happy Trails Podcast. Here we are together. If you're watching, you can see it. We're sitting side by side.
I can touch him.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
cute.
All right, all right. Yeah, a little Thanksgiving fun for us this week. So happy Thanksgiving. Hope you guys all had a great holiday. We got another few holidays coming up here in December, in January, and whatnot. Good
Yeah.
family time. Proudly wearing my Hawkeye Kinnick hat and my University of Iowa dentistry shirt after a stellar victory last night over
Huge
Nebraska.
Huge win.
Sorry, Nebraska. You don't shake hands at the beginning of the game. You know,
You get your ass kicked.
we're gonna kill you. Of course, Iowa did lead for exactly 0 seconds.
And when I say ass kicked, I mean by a field goal.
right.
But hey,
And again, Iowa never led until after the game was over when the field goal was kicked.
that's all that matters.
It's awesome.
It's all that matters. It's correct.
Yes, but that's maybe part of our topic today. We're talking about here on Happy Trails. We're going to talk about communication, maybe respect, something like that.
Yeah, sure.
And
Sounds good.
and how important that is in any kind of relationship. And so we talk a lot about numbers and stuff like that in the past, but it's maybe we're switching up a little different style today, possibly.
Yeah. How about that? So anyway, welcome to Happy Trails. Dr. Matt Bynum, Greenville, South Carolina. Wet finger practicing dentist for almost 30 years. And figuring out the next steps of multifamily and moving out of the part-time status of dentistry that I'm currently in into the full-time status of real estate.
Blaine McLaughlin, Robbins, Iowa is where where I live and practice in Cedar Rapids, and I'm working on getting out of full-time dentistry into part-time dentistry
Yeah.
and into real estate.
And it's a process, right?
It's a process.
It's a process.
It's a process, and it's you talk to you see this stuff online and whatever, and it sounds so easy, but it's a bit of work.
It is. It's not even a bit of work. It's a lot of work.
A lot of work. Yeah. And things, and as usual, things don't always go smooth. There's some times where you have challenges, like in all of life. And so I think it was what was one of our children was telling us, something about that sounds difficult, or my life is, and we're like, yeah,
Life is difficult.
we're like, yeah, it is, and it always will be.
Yeah.
And so it's not about getting knocked down because it's about getting back up. And so we taught them a good life lesson.
That's right. After we beat their butts. But besides that, no, I mean, so Blaine and I were talking about a couple of the properties that we're involved in while we're here together. And one of the discussions was very simply that we're involved in different properties, and some properties and some deals have better communication than others. Some we receive a monthly status report.
Mhm.
Some we receive a weekly status report on what's happening with the property. And you can, you have a tendency to be able to track trends that way. Some we get a monthly report, and some I haven't got a report yet. I mean, and it's sad because we should be getting some kind of a communication for the investment money that we do make. So having to inquire about it is something that probably an investor shouldn't have to do. But
Right.
certainly is something that happens dependent upon the GPs that are structuring the deal and that are working the deal. So some are better communicators than others. And that's where we got into this discussion of maybe we should talk about communication. So I said, what a great place to start. So we're involved in a few together, one of them in particular in San Antonio, of which I am a co-GP, and that is the property is called Villa de Oro. And
Sounds Spanish.
it is a little
Wow.
Spanglish, actually.
Is it
It's
Spanglish?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So this property is 150 units. It is in I believe the southeast side of San Antonio, Texas, and it is underperforming currently. The trend is moving in the direction we need it to, and of course things are picking up with the recent election. I think we're all seeing a little bit of a trend switch since the election. I think we're going to see even better stuff come in January. We've seen the market kind of take off in the last several weeks. So lots of things are happening in our favor, but we need a lot of things to happen in our favor to get those rates down, those percentage rates down, and also get occupancy back up. So we need some kind of attractant to get people there. This property in particular is one that we get. I know as a as a co-GP, I get weekly communication. The investors, like Blaine, gets a monthly communication. So that monthly communication gives a breakdown of the property, what's currently happening, and that kind of thing. And that's nice. And I think that should be standard of care, I think, in any property.
I would agree. I would agree.
So that way you can track the progress and know what your investment is actually doing. And if there's anything that you can do or anything you can offer up as advice, certainly everybody is welcome to offer advice. That doesn't mean we're going to take it. That doesn't mean it's even worthwhile. But sometimes somebody has something to add every now and then. You go, wow, and something I never thought about before. So, but there are things that we want to make sure we're tracking along the way. And that takes communication. If there's something that needs to be relayed to your investors, like the property is underperforming or the property is on the edge of, we're going to need a capital call here to make this thing continue on, or we need to talk about what's going to happen if we foreclose, that kind of thing. There's a lot of stuff in the mix of all these different properties. And in this last year, as we talked about, the rates were so high and coming down slowly that there's a lot of people that are getting hurt by that. So they're needing to get out of these deals. So we're starting to see a lot more deals coming to fruition on the market. And those are all good things for people that are buying, provided that the rate is low enough to be able to get into that kind of a deal. So I think the communication aspect on this deal in particular has been good. I'd rate it good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think because there's a monthly report.
Yeah. But on that note, I guess one thing that I've noticed, and this is probably different because he's a co-GP and I'm just an investor in this. And I've thought about this, and I think the reports are very nice, and it goes through a bunch of numbers, and it goes through, hey, this is what's going on, this is what's happening, that kind of stuff. But then I sometimes realize and think, is this like watching the news, right? The news gives you the information they want you to have,
Yeah.
right? And obviously, if you watched any political thing, the news stations are very politically biased. And so they give you what information they want you to hear as opposed to just reporting what's out there. And so that can be kind of the same situation here with this. You get what the GP who's in charge wants you to hear. And that goes back to know, like, and trust, right? And these people, how well do you like and trust them? And what information are they actually putting out there? Is it pertinent to what you're doing? I mean, does it help? And like I said, I think the communication is pretty good. But on the flip side, I've heard a few things that Matt says about it, because he's more on the inside than I am. And I'm like, well, I'd never heard anything about that in our monthly report. And so, some of it's being filtered, and I suppose that happens for multiple reasons. But I just kind of came across that thought process and thought that was kind of interesting. So again, you're getting the information, and there's some reports that I get from one of the deals. It's quarterly, so it's like you go 3 months, you don't know what's happening. Right?
Yeah.
Like, is this thing falling apart? Did it crash and did a meteor hit it or what? And you don't really know. Is it burned down? And so to me, that seems like a long time. But I like to know information, and that's one of those things that when I get into being a GP, I would probably like to be one of those guys that actually provides the information for the other investors, because I think it's really important. And so I think I'd be pretty thorough at doing that, communicating with everybody else.
Yeah, and I think that said, Blaine and I we're both investors, right? So we're part-time dentists or working towards part-time dentistry and doing more real estate investing. So of course we're in tune and we want to have that information. Well, the average investor probably isn't like that. The average investor is throwing money at it, just wanting to get 2 times their money out or 3 times, whatever it is. They invest the money and they move on to the next thing, and they hope the return is coming. That's really what I think happens to most people. So probably you're partway correct.
Yep.
So would I be, but the other part is other people don't really care.
Well,
But being on the inside, I think you do catch things, when they're showing you the month to month rents, they're showing you the trends, they're showing you who is lapse on the rent, who is being evicted, how many of those are happening each month. Um, what does that money equate to in total revenue being lost by the apartment complex itself? Is the eviction in the middle of the process? Because in Texas, it takes a little bit to get somebody out of their apartment. So you can hand them an eviction notice and they may be able to stay there for another 6 weeks where they don't pay anything. So these are people that kind of now they're moving into a squatters type situation where we're waiting to get for the legal system to get them out of the apartment in 4 weeks. Sometimes it takes longer. It just depends where we are in the year and holidays and whatnot. But if they're still in the apartment, you can't forcibly go in there and remove them. Although sometimes I think we'd all like to be able to go ahead and do that. That's not the way that the system quite works. So you're waiting, and all of a sudden your numbers are dwindling. But I think in seeing that every month as it comes through, I think you can track a trend. You can see where, gosh, each month there seems to be 4 evictions that happen. So every month for the last 6 months, there's been 4 evictions every single month. What's happening that we're having to evict people? Why is it that we're letting those people come into our system, into our ecosystem, and not pay their rent? What is it that they're fooling us on the front end by giving us the information and then not paying us on the back end? So there's got to be some information in there, and that sits with the management team and the management group that you hire to do the day-to-day property stuff. So those are information things, pieces that I like to see in the reports that are coming in. But Blaine's right. When you're part of the deal as a co-GP, and I'm a co-GP in another deal, it's formerly Cooks Creek, which is now changed its name to Pasadena, and this is with Granite Towers. Those guys, man, they have a meeting. We're on a meeting every week, and that meeting is so precise and so clear. They do such an amazing job.
very well structured.
God,
Like, is it
I'll tell you what, their management team is on it, and the guys that are structuring that, the full GP team in this particular group, they're really cool to listen to, because man, they know their stuff. And you just get on the call and it's like, okay, here's what we're attacking. This is A, this is B, this is C, this is D. Does anybody have anything they want to say or add? No. Great. We'll see. Let's talk to you guys next week. And they track it all, and you can see it all on graphs, and you can see it all on charts. And it's just, they're just following the business as it should be followed. And the property, that property in particular, is doing really well right now. So excited to see that one come to fruition once all the upfit gets done and the numbers come up too. So, but contrasting the two properties, getting a simple report per month and getting one that's detailed, being on the inside, totally different avenues of information. But obviously, like Blaine said, some of the stuff that's discussed between the general partners is stuff that's not meant to be out there for every single
Right, right.
investor. So
Yeah.
it would probably cause chaos and panic.
Yeah, can you imagine if all
Oh my God.
100 investors are like, "Hey, I want to talk about this
Oh my God. You
and
just-
give my input on whether we should plant this tree over here,
Yeah.
or
Oh,
if we should put the dog park fence 5 feet away from the wall or not."
I can't
You
even
know,
imagine.
I mean that it would just clog everything up and bog everything down. So I mean, you got to have some sort of a hierarchy in level. So that's um something about, but communication, like I said, not only between the GPs and the investors, but Matt talked about the property management people, right? They got to be telling the GPs, the asset managers, the property managers are on site. They're the ones that are hiring. They're the ones that are signing the leases and fixing and taking care of all the maintenance. They have to tell the asset managers, who are the GPs in the deal, people overseeing everything, what's going on. And that kind of communication is huge. And I've heard some stories about some breakdown there where, the property management team is kind of doing their own thing and they aren't telling anybody anything that's going on. And if the asset guy or girl is not on top of it and not, really working hard and paying attention, then then there's this big rift, and all of a sudden you find out what the hell's going on. You're like, oh my God, they've been doing this for 3 months. No wonder this is not working or whatever. And so there's all sorts of levels of communication that's important in these deals.
Yeah. Speaking of communication, why don't we bring on a guest?
Oh,
Cool with
Awesome. Yeah.
that? So we got a guest with us. We're gonna put him right in the middle. You
Yeah.
squeeze by.
Can you get in here?
Yeah,
Sit on that
yeah,
fireplace, hey.
I'm good to go.
Oh, there he is.
How's
There
it
he
going,
is.
everybody?
Hey, everybody, this is Luke Bynum. This is my middle child and the one that's in dental school in his second year down in Charleston. So Luke is a rising dentist who is going to come into the fold and do some great things while dad gets out of the fold and does some great things. So
Luke takes over.
yeah, so
But Luke
take
probably
over.
knows a little bit about communication. Not only is he in the dental field, but he played some college football. And I mean, there's got to be some level, how important was that when you're I mean, you know, everybody's got to communicate in a football game. And
Absolutely. I mean, it goes both ways. Coaches, equivalent to bosses, but teammates too, and a team functioning team has to communicate well. And if they don't, then that's cause for trouble for sure.
So would you say, like Luke, in the example you just gave of teammates? So in an apartment complex, because you're invested in a couple deals, are you not?
Absolutely.
So I know that you have some investment money with some different properties, and so the team is essentially the people that are running the deal. Would you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've got the management team that you talked about, Blaine, and you've got the GP team that put the deal together. So how critical is it that those two entities communicate?
I would say it's crucially critical because you want to keep your team up to speed, up to snuff. Because if they don't know what's going on with their investments, then they're going to get wary. Maybe they're not going to be as forward with future investments or want to be in your investment group anymore.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's very important because as the name of the game is compounding. Once one deal closes, you want to get into it, the next one and the next one and the next one, and it's all about relationships. So if you can't foster those great relationships and great communication from the top, then you're not going to have those recurring partners.
that's pretty important.
Did you say
That's cool.
relationship?
Relationship, yeah.
And in a relationship, you have to do what? You have to know,
Like
and
trust.
and trust.
No like and trust.
No, like and trust. No, that's a good point. Because if you can get a lot of people that do raise capital for these deals and get these deals going, have multiple investors that invest with them over and over and over again. And so, if I'm in a deal and nobody's talking to me, and even if I get some good returns in 5 years, I'm going to hesitate on going back in the next deal with them because it's like I
Right.
never knew what the hell was going on for the last 3 years. I mean, I had
Right.
no idea because the communication is so bad. And again, we talked about this. Some people are there for the returns. I kind of like to know what's going on, and that's probably because of my education, my knowledge, and experiences over the last 3 or 4 years that we've been doing this.
Yeah, and I think another thing that's absolutely critical to what you just mentioned is that you have to be able to track what's going on so you can make adjustment. That's probably the most crucial part. So if you've got a group that's doing quarterly, like you said, you have a group right now that's giving you quarterly reports. What's happening in the other two other 2 months that you all of a sudden don't hear anything? So every 3 months you hear something and the trend is staying the same or the trend is moving down. How do you know if there's a way that you can go in and bust that up and get it working the other direction? I think a quarterly contact is better than nothing.
Yep.
But I'd almost be hesitant on a quarterly contact. I really like the monthly contact. That's me. Now that said, there's different types of communication, right? So there's different people that communicate different places in different ways. So there's some people that don't want to have that monthly communication. They're like, don't bother me with that. That's annoying. Why are you sending this to me every month? You know what I mean? And there's other people that
They can
really want
ignore it.
that.
They can ignore it.
Yeah, so they can ignore it. I agree. But it should be out there. The information should be out there.
It should be out there.
So what are some
and
things that
available.
we want to, as an investor? So here's Luke is invested in some properties. What are some things that we want to tell Luke every month? So we're sending him a thing every month. What are some ideas as a GP on a deal that we want to give him information on?
Well, we talked about vacancies and occupancies and evictions and stuff like
That's
that.
huge.
And what's the trend? Because the biggest thing to drive profits in multifamily real estate is having your rooms filled with people sleeping in them and
Yep.
paying rent, right?
Yep.
And so that's the number one key in information is who's paying and how much and how many people are there and what's going on.
Another one is to go ahead and how's the upfitting coming along?
Yeah.
And what's that doing the
the
bottom
value
line,
add,
the
the value
value add,
How's that?
and what is
happening?
that doing to the property value each month? So the apartment that was renting for, $750 is now renting for $875. Then we want to know that because that's obviously
Huh?
boosting our dollars up. But if we have 5 evictions every month and we're going through the process of vacancy, then even though we're making money on one end, it's showing an even bottom line going forward. That still sucks.
Mm.
So that's another thing to know. Or Luke, what's something else that you'd want to?
I mean, you guys both hit on great points. I would say, just another thing is, uh, what are the steps moving forward? Like you touched on, repairs and upfittings and things like that, but also the vacancies and evictions. But what's the plan going forward? Maybe you haven't seen as much return, as much growth in the last quarter or month or year. But what's going to change? What's being
Where's the pivot?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What's the plan moving forward? You can't just have a plan from the beginning and go along with it. You have to adapt and adjust the plan, just to fit the market, fit your needs, fit the current situation. Because let's say you have, a lot of vacancies. What are you going to do to fill those at the moment? You can't just sit there losing money because you have a lot of vacancies, because you had a lot of evictions, because people weren't paying their rents. Are you just going to leave those rooms empty? What are you doing to fill that space? What's the plan going forward?
Yeah.
Blaine, do you think it's important to know what that plan's going to be from the GPs, or you just want to know that there is something being done?
That depends on the investor, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying
I'm
for
the
you.
kind of, so that's where I think it's important to put that information out there. And if you're like, whatever, I gotta,
Meaning
whatever.
you'd like to see
I
specifically,
do,
this
I do,
is,
yeah.
this is
yeah,
what we're
this
doing.
is what we're doing. Our plan is we're gonna offer some concessions, right? Because the neighbors next door haven't increased their rents, and so we can't increase ours because then
They're bringing the market value down.
they're we're competing directly with them, and people are going to go there instead of to our place
Sure.
because their rents are $20 lower a month or whatever.
Sure.
So how are we going to pull people in? Are we marketing differently? Are we offering other amenities that maybe they don't have? Are we offering concessions? 1 month free if you sign on for 12 or whatever that may be.
Luke, did you see any of that? You're living in an apartment right now, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what did you see in you're upping your lease? Because you just upped it just a few months ago, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So what was there any changes in that? Did they offer you anything? Did they?
There was no offer that was really significant. It was, hey, we're gonna up the rents $100 a month. Fortunately, the apartment I live in is pretty low rent month to month compared to the surrounding neighborhoods. I would say an apartment, about a mile down the street, a 2-bed apartment there is about 2,800. The apartment I live in is 2,100. So
Jeez.
it's definitely a smaller complex. I think 128 doors. So I mean, not too small, but a decent size. But just compared to some of the other apartments in the surrounding area in Charleston, South Carolina, the apartments go anywhere from 2 to 3,400. You're gonna pay more if you want to be closer to downtown. But at our place, there's not really any big upfittings. They just repainted the walls and the breezeways and the doors and things like that. But yeah, we saw $100 increase, and I feel like apartments don't really justify those as much as you would like to see. But I feel like that's the name of the game, honestly, from an investor perspective. The economy is going to keep fluctuating, and you have to adjust as owners and adjust as investors.
That's a pretty big jump, isn't it?
I think so.
$100 bucks?
Is that just mostly student housing?
No, it's
Yeah,
actually
No, it's a bar like
kinda-
full blown
Oh,
apartment.
yeah, so it's mostly I would say Charleston's big healthcare center with the hospital. So there's a good bit of healthcare workers in there, but also some students, and then a lot of people who work from home. Uh, as I could tell, because there's a lot of cars in the parking lot in the middle of a work day.
Yeah. But $100 is substantial.
That's well, if at $2,000 a rent a month, you're looking at 5% increase, which is pretty solid.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's pretty
And
big.
it's pretty steady across
Considering
the board.
you're headed into the low season, right? The winter months usually are harder to rent.
Right.
Typically rent stays a little more stable. The increase comes spring. So be interesting. I wonder what there's been such a huge supply of apartment coming out in across the country this year is 3 times what it's ever been or something like that over the last 10 years. So there's been a huge influx of a lot of newer places, which has caused rents to stay stable or go down, right?
Yeah,
So,
okay, I see what you're saying now.
so I wonder if Charleston's the same way. I mean, you know, Austin had 12% or 10% new apartments of you know, their existing structures, and so that's a huge amount of apartments coming online. So I wonder if there was if Charleston had that, or maybe they didn't have a lot of new construction, which is why they're able to up the rents a little bit more, because the demand is there, but the supply isn't. But
Right.
interesting to know
Well, and that was across the board across the United States, right?
that.
That's
Yeah, in
what
general,
created
yeah.
that issue. So now the builds they're back. They're talking about building is going to be up again.
Well,
So
it's
not
going to
only
be the next couple of years. There's been very few starts, so the next
Right.
couple of years there's going to be very few apartments coming online. So that is going to drive the demand side, because the supply side is going to be limited over the next few years. So you should see rent increases and values of properties going up the next couple
Up.
of years
correct.
because of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, for a lot of people, that's awesome.
Yeah.
For others, maybe not so awesome. But hey, so what a great way to talk about communication. We got to hear from somebody that's also a young investor, but also somebody that's currently renting an apartment complex. And we got to talk about some options and alternatives to what we like to hear in our projects that we're currently in. And we got to hear some things about some of the things that are being told to us on a month-to-month basis as it sits right
Yeah.
now. So obviously communication is something that as an investor, you want to hear if you're involved in multifamily real estate. If you're just an investor that just is trying to turn money, then you probably don't want to hear as much. You just want to hear about the return.
Yeah.
You guys agree with that?
Absolutely. And I would say Blaine made a great point earlier is, you know, more communication is always going to be better. Have your investors, know as much as they can, but if that, like you said, if you're not an investor that wants to be in on every single decision and every single update, then delete the email.
Delete, move on.
Bleep. Bleep. That's great. Well, Dr. Luke, thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me.
You're going to have to share this with all the guys and gals in your class and turn them on to Happy Trails. Make sure they tune in every week. It's the fastest growing multifamily real estate podcast out there right now.
Of course it
And
is.
jump on board, get a listen, get a watch, and hopefully we can have some other people from your class get on board and maybe even bring them on the show and talk about some things that you guys are facing.
Absolutely. Can't wait to share the link.
Very cool. Very cool.
All right, man.
It's just below. Hey, everybody.
Happy trails.
Happy trails.
Brother.
Happy trails.
Happy Thanksgiving. Good job.
See ya.
Good job.
Who cares about the clouds when we're together? Just sing a song